Let's get into this. Ron DeSantis, Florida's governor, is pushing for a law that would allow parents to review school curriculum and sue schools if they teach critical race theory. Should parents have the right to shape the curriculum their children are being taught? And is critical race theory being taught? I don't ever remember it in any classes that I've taken, even in college for that matter, Karen.
Yeah, this is where we should be critical and look at these waves of laws that are sweeping, especially across red states, and how they're coming into being and when they're coming into being. Look, again, in my reporting, I'm here in Texas. I grew up in Texas. Critical race theory was not something I heard about until I was in college. Now, again, for us sitting here, it's Black History Month. It's a time where we're looking back on the civil rights leaders and even looking forward to now about, again, it is about teaching and how our society, right, has been formed. The frank matter is race is everywhere. White supremacy is everywhere. And I think, back to what we were talking about a little bit before the break, examples of kids being made to do, frankly, I think silly exercises where they need to pretend that they were slaves. And, I think it's more so an example of poor teaching methods than it is about official pedagogy. But I think what is really critical and frankly scary is that what we're seeing across these states is also this legislation, is also books that are being banned, and not just by Black authors, but by LGBT authors, books about sexuality and helping kids to understand the world that they're living in. So, these efforts, I think parents have always had a say, school boards have always had a say in what goes on in their kids' education. And frankly, what this looks like is not critical race theory. It looks like censorship. It looks like backlash, frankly, against what we saw in this country in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement, in terms of forcing very deeply uncomfortable conversations around race, policing, representation. And what is happening here is that there are a lot of people, particularly in Republican states, that would just rather we just not talk about these. And so why not use the power of the law and use the power of school boards to just squash these conversations? And I think that's really what's happening. None of this is really about critical race theory, but really, frankly, about, I would say, white backlash to Black political progress and representation. And this is, any honest scholar would see that this has been the history of America since Reconstruction. Black progress by minorities, by women, leading to backlash. And that's what we're living through right now.
Yeah. Do you agree with her, Shamika? She says it's really about backlash. It has nothing to do with critical race theory.
I think you'll always have people that have some type of animosity, but overall, no, I don't think that it's simply about backlash. I have a Twitter friend that I've become very close with who lives in Florida, and I've had the opportunity to hear her thoughts about the legislation. She teaches ninth grade African American history, and she said that it has not affected her being able to teach her class and being able to teach African American history effectively. Again, it goes back to, I think, the particular teachers and how they are, spinning their views and trying to implement what they think is the best way to overcome the systems that they believe are racist or oppressive. So again, if you're there with good intentions and you're actually teaching the historical aspects of history when it comes to this legislation, you aren't affected by it. This teacher very openly and very honestly said it is not affecting her in the way that she's able to teach African American history. And she shares a lot of her class lessons online on Twitter for everyone to see. And we enjoy looking at the lessons that she's giving the kids each day. And it really seems like they are learning things that even I, growing up in a Black community, going to all Black schools, didn't always learn.
So if I could push back on that, only because, again, I think what we're talking about here is it's not about just simply whether or not good people have good intentions in their hearts and things like that. That's all well and good. But what we're talking about is systemic use of laws, use of state school boards in order to push legislation, in order to push, again, in my reporting here in Texas, I've spoken to many teachers who have preemptively pulled books that were harmless, that they've taught for years, because they are afraid what this movement is doing. And I've talked to countless teachers, school board administrators who are afraid to do their jobs and afraid to teach Black history, who are even pulling Michelle Obama's biography off of the shelves because they're afraid of the backlash from well-funded groups who are saying that this is somehow poisoning their children. And so, frankly, what's happening across the country, it's great that, some teachers feel that freedom, but there are a lot who do not. It's creating a chilling effect. And I think there are a lot who are very worried about just being able to even present children's books that feature Black characters. This is real and this is happening.